Hey everyone, it's Kim and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new around here, my name is Kim and I love reading about food, whether that is food nonfiction, chefs' memoirs, food history, world travel writing, and now I've really merged over into food fiction, culinary romances, and so on. I am here today to bring you my top 5 favorite nonfiction food reads of 2022. The first book was actually one of the first books I read in 2022, and that was Eating to Extinction, The World's Rarest Foods and Why We Need to Save Them by Dan Saladino. First off, I think the cover of this book is really beautiful. I received an early NetGalley copy of this book as an audiobook and then ended up purchasing the book for my shelves in hardcover. This is a great book. If you are new to food writing in general, this is a great book to learn about some really unique food items globally. Each chapter gives you a different topic to learn about and what that food does for the environment, how it helps the people, and why we need to keep it. I think it's a really, as we continue to fight climate change and frankly lose this battle with climate change, more and more of our foods are going to disappear with time. Not only will these foods disappear with time, environmental changes, like you get it, climate change is real and it's happening. And Dan Saladino's book is a really approachable way to learn about some really unique foods that you might not even get a chance to eat in your lifetime just because of how rapidly they're disappearing. I found it really approachable, very easy to digest, and I liked that you could read a chapter and you could come back later if you wanted to read the next chapter. I'm not normally like that. I try to stick with the same book, but I know there are tons of people out there that read 6 books at the same time. So this is a great book if you want to read a chapter, walk away, and come back to it later. Really loved this book, and it was actually one of the first books I read in January. The next book on this list is actually an oldie. It came out in 2011, and it is called Shucked: Life of a New England Oyster Farm by Erin Byers Murray. I love memoirs. I have always loved food memoirs, and this author, Erin, decides that she is going to spend a season working on an oyster farm. And I don't know a lot about oysters other than I find them delicious, and I love a female protagonist. Obviously she's a real person, but I love a female protagonist who she just goes for it, and she puts herself in an environment she knows nothing about, and it's tough. It's physically grueling to work as an oyster farmer and learning how to be cold all the time and wet all the time, but the joys and obsessions of loving oysters and being surrounded by people who love oysters. In turn, you also have the dynamics, because it's a memoir, of how does this what seems like spontaneous change impact relationships, impacts her marriage. I really, really liked it. I thought it was simple, it was funny, and it's, at this point, wow, over 10 years old, and I still felt the things that she was learning, both about herself, about oyster farming, about these small, local community-driven foods. Like, all the things that she learned, I think, are still applicable today. I would kill to go to an oyster farm. There's also a nonprofit in New York City that is working to bring oyster farming back to the Hudson River. Historically, the Hudson River actually used to be a great place for oysters, and then we polluted and destroyed the environment. So the Billion Oyster Project is a really great organization. If you're inspired to learn and read Shucked, I also recommend you check out that nonprofit as well. Skipping ahead a couple of months, the next book on my list that was one of my top nonfiction books of the year is $Billion Burger: Inside Big Tech's Race for the Future of Food by Chase Purdy. So this is from 2020. It's about 272 pages. I read this in March, and the title gives the whole thing. It is about the future of food, and I really found this year that I was obsessed with the future of food. I love learning about the differences between lab-grown meats, alternative meats. That is a part of our future that we are really going to need to consider and learn about, especially because we know that the current supply chain around traditional meat is not sustainable and it is destroying the environment. I know I really am harping on a lot of environmental related books this year, but that was where my mind went. That was what I was reading this year and it really resonated with me. I also think it's very current and important. So just recently the FDA approved cell-grown meats as generally regarded as safe foods. What does that mean, Kim? That's a lot of words. It means that when you have a new food category, people don't really know how to react, and the government is very slow and reactive to changes in food and policy changes. So for the FDA to say, yes, this is something that is safe to eat, means that these startups who have been trying to solve our food problems they have won the next step to start selling into stores and grocery stores. That's a whole other challenge to get your food actually on the shelf as a grocery store. But prior to this FDA ruling, people weren't even sure the food was safe. And some people really will only listen to what the government says. The government has to tell me it's safe to eat before I eat it. I encourage you all to make your own best judgments, use your own brains, because like I said, the FDA is reactive and slow to work. But going back to the book, Billion Dollar Burger takes you to a couple of different facilities and companies that are really passionate about this emerging market. This book focuses on the burger, but there are definitely other areas of future food tech that are growing, such as alternative and cell-grown meats for fish is another big area, especially salmon and tuna that is growing. So if you want to learn more about it, I highly recommend it. It's super cool. I really, really liked this book. I think I read it while I was maybe I didn't read it. I was listening to it while I was traveling too, which I feel like when I'm traveling from work, because I work in food and I've developed new products, when you're learning about it while also on a business trip, I just felt so cool. Number 4, Technically Food, Inside Silicon Valley's Mission to Change What We Eat by Larissa Zimberoff. First off, Larissa Zimberoff is a fantastic author. She's very active on Instagram. I follow her now all the time, and we've actually had conversations. She actually responds to DMs, which I always think is so cool for authors. This is one of the first books also. Oh no, I'm sorry. I read this in March. I'm looking at my Storygraph app in case anyone wonders why I keep looking down. This one was another future food tech. It's what is food going to look like in the next couple of years, but learning about not just cell-grown things, but alternatives like what kelp can do to help the environment, or alternatives to eggs, or learning about mycelium, which is the network that grows underground that can produce mushrooms, and how mycelium is being used in fermentation tanks to grow and create alternative meat products. This was such a cool book. I learned so much. And what I love about books, I love the food journey, learning about a chef and their life, but I also love learning new things. So to learn about this whole emerging world of food is so much fun. I actually bought a couple of the food items that were noted in this book. I've tried Meaty, which is a brand that makes mycelium-based meat products. I've tried 2 different types of chicken. They just came out with steak. It's really cool. And is it going to be a 1-for-1 for real steak? No. But the idea is, again, we know that our global supply chain for meat is not sustainable. So what are we going to do about it? I'm someone who shops organic. I recognize that that is a place of privilege. But I also want to do my part. So I will try these alternative food items. Now, they're a little expensive right now because of economies of scale. And again, I recognize my privilege, but the book just got me jazzed. Have you ever tried puffed kelp chips? They basically taste like Cheetos. They're just shaped a little different, and they kind of look like they're green, so they look like kelp. It's a lot of fun, and I really, really loved this book. Another to add to the list is a biography, The Man Who Ate Too Much, The Life and Times of James Beard by John Birdsall. I will be totally honest, I know James Beard from the James Beard Awards, didn't know a dang thing about James Beard's life, and this is a really thoroughly researched biography. It also takes the lens of, so it's not just a traditional biography, it actually takes the lens of James Beard being a closeted gay man. Remember that this man lived in a very different time than now, and being closeted was the norm during the World War I, World War II. I was really interested to get to know James Beard as a whole, learning where his culinary influences came from, learning what drove him, how he was driven by money or driven by acceptance from others, but also to learn kind of this sad side of James Beard, of how he really just wanted to be loved. And his mom was his best friend, but he never got that kind of love from his father, because his father and mother, you learn, were in a loveless marriage. And essentially James Beard's dad had a whole other family and life because he just didn't want James and his mom. Anyway, it's a really, really good biography, very thoroughly researched. If you want to learn about a culinary titan of American cuisine and American food history, read about James Beard, and I highly recommend this book. And the final book I would add to this list, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you to go read Kosher Soul by Michael Twitty. Kosher Soul came out in August. He is the author of The Cooking Gene. This is his second memoir, and it is about the intersections of his life being a gay, Black, Jewish man. I have a whole separate review of this book on my channel, but I love Michael Twitty. I love the way he writes. I love that he narrates his own audiobooks, and I think it is important to read about a world different than mine. I am Persian American. I am white presenting. There are definitely privileges that come with being white presenting. I think it's really important for me to read diversely and read about experiences that I'm never going to experience myself. I really loved the book. There were moments where my heart ached, moments where I laughed, and I go listen to the full review. I'll link it up above. And that is just the final book I really want to recommend to you guys to read. Is one of my favorite books of the year. So that's it. That is my list. I don't think it's even top 10. I didn't actually count out loud, but those were my favorite nonfiction books of 2022 in the food writing space. Let me know in the comments below if you read any of these books. What do you recommend for me? There's always more books out there to read. Enjoy. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I recommend hitting the notification bell because I am posting a little bit infrequently right now, and I want you to know as soon as I have a new video out there. I hope you're well. See you in the next one. Bye.